Hello, and welcome to the Complete Guide to the Human Design System, Part 13. And today we're going to talk about one of the most important things in our lives, and that is nutrition. It is one of the most profound subjects in the study in human design, particularly in primary health system and PHS, and we're going to take a look at that. But I really want you to understand, in our journey together, and we've been going quite a while now, in our journey together, basically what I've been doing is that I've been showing you the nature of conditioning. This is the story. Every place that we have looked, everywhere that we have been looking, everything that I point to is I point to the impact of conditioning on your lives. Obviously, the more you are aware of the depth of conditioning in your life, the more it opens up the possibility that you may take the opportunity to enter into the experiment of strategy and authority and see how different that is for you in this life. But the conditioning that takes place, the tendency in most people when they first confront the concept of conditioning, they tend to see conditioning as simply something that is psychological. In other words, they tend to see the conditioning as the influences that are around them in terms of the influences, the concretized influences of others, what they say, and so forth and so on. When you enter into human design and you're introduced to the nature of the aura and the way in which we connect with others, conditioning takes on another level. In other words, it takes on a level in which the conditioning is something that goes deep, deep in that sense within us and has an extraordinary impact on the way in which our mind operates, since our mind is so deeply connected in that sense to its vulnerability to being receptive to conditioning. But perhaps the most profound conditioning of all, is food. It's food. Food is the great homogenizing agent. It really is. It's an extraordinary thing to see. And it is interesting to understand that it is through food that the limitation of humanity, the present limitation of humanity, is simply maintained. In other words, the inability of humanity to be able to break out of, being the homogenized herd, and it begins with food. One of the things that I love about the knowledge is that the knowledge, because it is mechanical, it approaches things from a totally different perspective. Food is one of those things that all of us seem to have an intimate relationship with. And all of us seem to have our opinions about what's good food, what's bad food, what's right food, what's wrong food. All of us have our habits, our trends, whether it's the latest Thai or the latest Japanese or the latest this or that. There's all these movements in food, the macrobiotics, the bio food, this kind of food and that kind of food. There's this whole thing. And then you take a look at the way in which food functions within our society. Now remember that for us, because we live in the time of the cross of planning, which is rooted in the tribal mechanism, that for the tribe, food is something that is a very important aspect of the social dynamic. In other words, we are expected in that sense to eat together. Not only are we expected to eat together, but we are also expected in the grace of having food to be open to bringing others into our environment to share food with us. It's interesting during this time of the cross of planning in which the organization, the tribal organization of society, has ended up with, this vast homogenized way in which we take in food. For example, the chain food stores, the McDonald's that cover the planet, that provide the same homogenized diet to people all over the world, bringing literally the same dumbing down frequency. And by the way, I have nothing against McDonald's. It isn't about the food, which is what the different perspective is all about. And it isn't about the food, and it isn't about bowing down to social mechanisms that lock us into homogenized patterns. I want to put up an illustration for you here. And the illustration that I'm putting up here is the basic outline of the nature of PHS, that is the nature of primary health system. And you can see that it begins with the term determination. Now, determination is something very important. What determination represents is a way in which each and every one of us are naturally determined to have precisely the right digestive process. Remember, I said that the mechanics in human design give us a different perspective. Through the mechanics, we are not looking at what the food is. We are looking at the design of the digestive system. And when you begin to look at the design of the digestive system within the context of human design, the first thing you get to see is that there are 6 primary digestive systems, in other words, 6 basic different digestive systems that are binaries. In other words, for humanity, there are 12 different ways in which digestive process works uniquely. I have a fly in the studio. That's always amusing. It's also distracting. Determination. So think about it this way. Think about the house cat. You know, it's the best example. Anybody who's ever had a cat for a pet, and anybody who has ever been in a situation in which you have witnessed that cat capture a mouse, to watch what the cat does to the mouse, for most human beings is rather offensive. It gives the sense of cruelty. It appears to be very, very cruel. And of course, we're looking at that from the perspective of our, philosophical context relative to this and that. What we're not looking at is the digestive system of the cat. In order for the cat to be able to digest the food correctly, it needs to develop certain chemistry in its stomach. All of this whacking and chasing is developing the chemistry necessary for it to be able to digest what is, raw food, raw meat. And without all of that, it cannot do that. It's why you see that most domesticated cats can only eat processed food now. What are they going to do? Whack the tin? They have no way of being able to orient their digestive system correctly to take in the food in a way that is correct for them, that will provide them with the nourishment they need. And we are mammals. Each and every one of you was born with the potential of a unique digestive system. And that unique digestive system has certain demands on the way in which you take nutrition into your system. So look at the illustration here. Determination, a genetic predisposition to form differentiation. A predisposition. In other words, built into everyone is a readiness to be themselves, which is kind of sweet, no? I mean, it's built into all of us. There is a predisposition to differentiate. It doesn't mean that that's a given at all. It is a predisposition. It's like somebody who has talent and never practices. There's a predisposition, but it doesn't mean that they're going to turn out to be an artist. It doesn't. But it does say that in each and every one of us there is a predisposition. This determination is something we can measure. It's what primary health system is about. Primary health system is about determining what is the determination of any particular human being and providing the advice necessary for them to be able to bring nutrition correctly into their vehicle. Now think about the second part of this, determination transference, a conditioned predisposition to form homogenization. Not form differentiation anymore, not at all, but homogenization. And homogenization that takes place through transference. Now at the physical level, when you're not eating correctly, in other words, when you're not fulfilling what is the demands of your particular digestive system, you're homogenizing your system. And I want you to think about what that means. What we're looking at is that the main area that is going to be impacted when you don't take nutrition correctly into your vehicle is your brain, is the brain system itself. Look at underneath, that is the third category here, and we're looking at internal determination. Now, internal determination is the thing that determines what is the right diet for you. And that correct dietary regimen is a predisposition that drives differentiated brain function. Now look, think about it this way. From the moment you come into the world, you're not necessarily, unless you're very lucky, you're not necessarily taking nutrition in correctly. Your parents are unlikely to treat you according to your design. In other words, neither psychologically nor physically are you being raised correctly. What that means is that your process is being homogenized. We have a phenomena, and it's a phenomena about the development of the neural system of the brain. From the time you're born till the time that you're 3 years of age, this is the time in just about all human beings in which there is neural development. In other words, by the time you get to 3 years of age, the expansion of your brain's neural capacity shuts down and doesn't go any further. Now, a number of years ago, Johns Hopkins University, in a 25-year study of gifted children, one of the things as a byproduct of that study was the discovery that these children didn't have neural shutdown till they were 5. Now, one of the things that PHS predicts, and it is something that is an obvious given everything else we understand about the system, is that each and every one of us have the potential of approximately 7 years of neural development. Now, that would create a very different kind of brain. But all of us were shut down at 3. Now, one of the things to understand about dietary regimen is that dietary regimen is there to get rid of the sludge, if I can put it that way, the areas in the brain that are not of value to you are no longer provided with nutrition, but the areas in the brain that are essential for you, these are the ones that are going to get exactly the right nutrition in order for you to be able to develop the full capacity of your brain system. Now, it doesn't open up all that neural potential. You know, one of the things that PHS predicts, and right now there's probably 24 babies in the world that are being raised according to their primary health system. The prediction of PHS is that they will not have neural shutdown until they're 7 years of age, that they will go through a complete cycle because they are both being raised correctly and they're being provided with precisely the right nutrition. And again, it's not about the food, as you'll see. It isn't. It isn't about the food at all. It's about how you take the food into your system. This is what matters. This is what makes this information so spectacular. Because it isn't about trying to devise a way to, analyze all the endless different foods that we have and what's good and what isn't good. It isn't about that. It's about you and whether you're correct in the way you take food in. It's my standing joke. When I'm correct in the way in which I take nutrition into my body, it doesn't matter whether I'm eating roadkill or filet mignon. I'm going to be able to take out of what I put in, my system is going to be able to take precisely what it needs from that. This is what's so important. And what it needs, and what I mean by that is that it's taking in precisely what's necessary for you to be different. Because that's what correct nutrition is. Nutrition that supports your differentiation. Nutrition that supports your difference. Your difference. And you see, everything that I have shown you is how susceptible we are to conditioning, how open we are, how we are fundamentally receptors in all of this, and how deeply we are conditioned in terms of food and the way in which we eat. So let's take a look. Let's have a little journey into the digestive history of humanity. I'm going to change this illustration now. And in this illustration, what you're looking at is you're looking at the theme of color. And you'll remember from our last episode that in looking at color, that what color brings on the design side is that color brings the determination. In other words, it is through color that we get to devise or find out what is specifically your particular dietary regimen. Now, as I said, there are 6 specific regimens, but those regimens are dualities. In other words, that they have 2 sides to them. That binary is the influence of the tone underneath the color. But what I really want to show you today is I want to give you a journey, if you will, through the various kinds of digestive systems to give you a sense of what it means to operate correctly according to digestion. So let's start at the very beginning. And when we start at the beginning in any construct in human design, you start at the bottom. You start with the 1. This is always going to be the foundation. This is always going to be the basis. And here when you start with the 1, you get the theme of appetite. Now this theme of appetite is a dietary regimen that's referred to as the caveman, cavewoman. Now this is the most primitive digestive system. These are people that are designed to eat one thing at a time. Think about that. When you're looking at this graph of the 6, you can see it's divided in half. The bottom 3, the upper 3, that is the 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, and then the 4, 5, 6 at the top. The bottom 3 have a super keynote. And that super keynote that they have is called conditions. So each of the lower colors, the 1, 2, and the 3, they all bring certain eating conditions. The upper color brings circumstances. So in conditions, the most severe condition, and I say severe because it's very rigid, is that all of those beings that are first color, 1 out of every 6 human beings, over 1 billion human beings on the planet, that the way they should be eating is one thing at a time. Think about that. Their digestive system is primitive. It cannot handle anything more than that. I have watched the astonishing, absolutely astonishing impact on beings who are first color. The moment they move away from the conditioned way that they have been, conditioned by society and their culture to eat, that the moment they've moved away from that and they've entered into eating one thing at a time, everything about them physically has been transformed because it's correct for them. And it doesn't matter what that one thing is. It doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's nuts or it's a piece of meat, or it doesn't matter what it is. It's one thing at a time because their digestive system cannot handle anything else. And the moment that you take this person that is here to eat one thing at a time and you give them an omelet with this in it and that in it and this in it and that in it and you throw it on their plate, boy, do they get instantly homogenized. And by the way, anyone who experiments with their dietary regimen, the moment that they break away from it and go back, oh, do they get the message. Because it's not what your body wants. And it's not what your body needs. And it's not what your brain needs. It isn't. There's a discussion that goes on in human design. And it has to do with the stages of and the potential of transformation in a human being. The first step for anyone, the step that is the most important and the one that catalyzes the whole potential of the life, is strategy and authority. But once one has entered into the experiment of strategy and authority, there are 4 transformations that are possible. And they all begin in the same place. They begin with dietary regimen. They begin with cleaning up your system. And remember, because dietary regimen has a direct influence on the physical functioning of your brain, it means that you have the heightened potential, sensory potential. You have heightened potential in terms of the acuity of your mind. Your physical body is going to operate better. It is the brain system, obviously, that is the control center for the way in which this bioform operates. So following your dietary regimen, this is something that is about the well-being of your entire system. But more than that, it's about enhancing your own potential. You get rid of the gunk, by bringing nutrition specifically to what is correct for you, and slowly you begin to enhance your whole cognitive process because you're cleaning the machine. You're cleaning the machine and you're making it possible for it to work precisely in a way that brings out your determination, brings out your potential of uniqueness. All right, so we have conditions. When we get to the 2, we get to a progression. Basically what you're looking at when you look from the bottom to the top, from the 1 to the 6, you're looking at our evolution. It's a nickname, keynote caveman, cavewoman for the first color. But in fact, this is that dietary regimen. It is a very, very old digestive system. It isn't able to handle a lot of complexity. Then we get to the 2. The 2 is very, very unusual. Because the thing about the 2 is that the 2 is incredibly, incredibly selective. Selective. In fact, these are beings that are intended to have a very precise and set food regimen, that is a menu, a set menu that they repeat every single day, and a menu that can only change in relationship to seasons. In other words, seasonal foods that are available and so forth and so on. But everything about these beings is the exact repetition. This is the desert island people. What wonderful meal would you love to have 3 times a day? Whatever it is, your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, whatever the pattern is, but it has to be repeated. These are babies that suffer terribly. They suffer terribly. These are babies that are forced to eat diversity. All they want is the same plum, sauce over and over again. And their mother is sticking, tuna in them and this in them and that in them. And, they are really fixed on one thing. And they spit it out and the mother sticks it back in their mouth because it is not commonly understood. These are beings that need to have a very, very precise and repetitive diet. It's the only thing that is going to truly be healthy for them. Remember, these are conditioned beings. Again, this is a primitive system. Again, this is an older digestive system that isn't capable of dealing with, a huge array of different varieties of foods going into the system. It recognizes what it likes, and it has to stay with it. You find the thing you like, and you stay with it. Now, to anybody other than a 2, that would seem horrendously redundant, repetitive, boring. As a matter of fact, for many of the 2s, when they first confront that, even though they recognize that trait in themselves, that they love to have the same breakfast, or they love to have the same kind of lunch, or whatever, the idea that they have to fix it, it's psychological, it's a mental thing. But the reality is that the moment that they do that, their digestive system is operating correctly, and that means they get the right nutrition. They get the right nutrition to be able to enhance their brain process. This is what it's all about in terms of being able to set yourself up for a transformation that allows you to fulfill the potential of your particular possibilities, your awareness, the potential of your outer authority. All of these things are determined by the well-being of your vehicle. The final condition is the 3rd color. And the 3rd color is very interesting because the 3rd color is really about hot and cold. It's about temperature. It's about the manipulation of food. It is, in the evolutionary sense, when the beginnings of what we would call cooking, what we would call cuisine, the beginnings of this process of blending and using energy to create the blending and so forth and so on. The mutation, the manipulation, if you will, of food. And when you're looking at beings who are a 3, they're either going to be hot or they're going to be cold. And basically what that means is that if you're hot, that you have to take food into your system that is above your body temperature. That's hot. Anything below your body temperature is called cold. And if you're on the cold side, you can't have anything above what is your body temperature. Now think about it this way. Think about somebody who is hot. In other words, they have to take in warm food, and it has to be warmer than their body temperature. The reason for that is that they've got a digestive system that doesn't generate enough heat. You know, it doesn't generate enough chemical heat in order to be able to break down the food in the way that's necessary. So these are beings that consistently need to have warm food that acts as an agent to help the digestive system. The opposite on the other side, the cold. These are beings that have an overheated digestive system. If you keep on pumping warm food into them, they burn off what is of value, and they don't get the nutrition that is correct for them. They just don't. When you enter into the experiment in human design, you're entering into a very selfish journey. It's selfish in the sense that you are here first to fulfill your own promise. Food is a way in which we are socially conditioned by others. You know, if you're somebody that has a food regimen that, goes against what everybody else is doing, with the general way in which people eat, where everything is blended and mixed and thrown together for all of these conditioned people, this is terrible. And yet at the same time, within the social context, if they don't have a strength in their own purpose in what they're what their road is all about, how easy it is for them to simply be homogenized back into that process. And then you never get to take the journey. I mean, you can benefit from strategy and authority all your life and never get to take these journeys. Strategy and authority makes your life easier. It just does. But the promise of being able to fulfill your uniqueness, that's something else. That's far beyond just learning how to make a decision. I mean, strategy and authority is the ground floor. It's just about learning how to make a decision as us, as a nine-centered being, so you can function in this world correctly. This is what that is all about. But beyond that is a highly disciplined inner voyage. It has to be. Because you have to confront all kinds of social consequences to the way in which you operate. And food is one of those things that binds us to others. It can be very alienating. I mean, when we get above the line here, when we go up here and we get to the circumstances are very different. It's no longer these very, very strict conditions. It isn't. It is about circumstances. It is about the environment. This is a much more sophisticated, if you will, digestive system, not better. There's no better in any of this. It is just simply they're all different. I mean, I'm a circumstance person. I'm a fourth color. So I'm a circumstance person. And you can see that in circumstance and in this fourth color, you've got two sides. One side is calm, and the other side is nervous. I'm the calm side. So one of the things for me that is so important in my life is that when I eat, it's as calm as it can possibly be, which is why I eat most of the time alone, in order to have the benefit of the digestion, in order to be able to have that process, because it's not about me, it's about the environment around me, because it's circumstance. And of course, this creates social consequences. I mean, it's an obvious one for me. In my family, my eldest son is exactly opposite me. So I'm calm and he's nervous. And that means when the two of us are sitting at a table together, somebody's got to lose. I mean, somebody's got to lose. I mean, normally in my household, it's me, because it's never calm if everybody is sitting together, which is terrific for my son, because, of course, he's got the nervous. And basically what that means is that he needs a lot of things going on around while he's digesting his food. So if he's sitting by himself, all in quiet like I would, calmly eating, he's not gaining any benefit from the food at all. None. To understand what it means to be one of these mechanisms, to be there on the ground floor, to be able to really see how the thing works. And you see, the moment that you begin to understand how the thing works, it's a no-brainer, to try it, to see what the advantages are for you. For many, in circumstance, there's the serendipity in life. You know, the child that happens to be in a tumultuous environment. But then again, think about it. Go back a second. Let's go back to the conditions. I want to give you an example of conditioning that's really a mind blower. You know, think about the hot and the cold. Eh? I mean, think about that. There are some children that come into the world, 1 out of every 12 children comes into the world where the food that they need to take into their system needs to be below body temperature. And then they come into the world and there they are, beautiful picture, little baby, breastfeeding. And you think all of that's so beautiful. Mother and child, you know, love, you know, sharing from her body, providing this nice, warm milk. Yeah. But the child's being conditioned. Deeply conditioned. The mother that only wants to breastfeed her nervous child in a totally quiet place. You know? And then she wonders why the child's got gas in his colic. Because the child wants nervous. It would prefer that the mother would breastfeed in a crowded cafe, you know, and then everything would be really cool, you know. See, that's the beauty of mechanics. And it goes to, well, it goes everywhere. Let's look at the 5th color. The circumstance of sound. High frequency, low frequency, loud, soft, there, not, sound. Now think about human beings, you know, and think about what it means in this context to understand digestion. Here is somebody that either is going to need to eat in a place that is absolutely quiet and, you know, no noise, or somebody that needs to eat and there is a volume of sound that just, well, fills them up. Interesting thing, by the way, about circumstance, because the circumstance digestive system is relatively modern, it means that many things about it can benefit from technology, particularly the 5th and 6th color people. Because you see, let's say you're a 5th color person, and you're living in the countryside and it's really quiet, and you're supposed to have, you know, loud, you know, the high end when you're eating. How nice it is to be in the age of the iPod. You know, you just plug them into your ears, crank up the volume, and eat. And it changes everything. The other side of that, by the way, is that if you're living in the middle of New York City, and you're trying to have lunch, and there's 8,000 taxi cabs honking their horns, you can get Bose noise reduction headphones, you know. Cut out all the sound. I mean, you can sit in silence in the middle of the noisiest place in the world and eat and have a lovely digestive process. We're just mechanisms. And the beauty of what it is to recognize the nature of your mechanics is that it's so revealing about what you can do to take the best out of life. I mean, yes, dietary regimen may create certain social dilemmas depending on the kind of regimen that you have. But that's not the point, is it? Are you willing to sacrifice your body, your health, your brain, your well-being because some people don't like the way you want to eat? I mean, you know. It's your life. It's your well-being. It is the basic essence of what it is to feed these things, to keep them going. The nutrition that you bring into these systems is everything. It's not about how well you eat, remember that. It's how correctly you eat. It's how correctly you eat. And as long as you eat correctly, you're going to get precisely the nutrition that is correct for you, that enhances that whole process of differentiation, that enhances the potential. You know, what we looked at when we looked at tone and color. I mean, think about the tone that lies underneath. Here's your cognitive potential, and it's a potential that is concretized in the brain as a sense. As a sense. Let's say for you, it's your sense of smell, as an example. If you're somebody that has a natural sense of smell, in terms of design, in terms of the tonal on the design side, the vast majority of you don't gain advantage from that sense because you're homogenized. And the areas in the brain that are there to support the potential of that particular sense are homogenized. Homogenized in the sense that, all the senses are getting relative attention from the homogenized spreading of the wrong nutrition, but the real power in what is your brain system and the real sensory capacity that is there in you, that's not the thing that's getting nutrition at all. The moment that you enter into the right dietary regimen, what you're doing is you're providing nutrition to those areas, specific areas, that are going to free that cognition. So let's say it's the sense of smell. So you're following your strategy and authority, and you're eating according to your dietary regimen. It means that the decisions that you're making are being supported by the deep sensory capacity you have, that smell capacity that is guiding the way in which your design is going to operate. In other words, you're operating more intelligently than you've ever operated before because you're getting the inside information. In other words, you're getting the sensory information that you need. That sense of smell just isn't about the obvious. The obvious of, the various levels of aroma. It is about the information that is carried in it. The information of taking in somebody else and taking in that, that act of smelling is a way of defining them genetically, recognizing threats or not. All of this is a possibility when you have an enhanced capacity in terms of your senses, and you're not going to get that unless you're feeding them. You can't. They require the correct nutrition. Otherwise you don't get the advantage. And of course, again, for the vast majority of humanity that hasn't even, encountered strategy and authority, all of that's a pipe dream. And for most people who have entered into their strategy and authority, they're still not getting access to their potential. They're just able to make decisions correctly, But those decisions that they're making, they're also lacking greater depth. They are. The decision-making process that one gets out of strategy and authority is basically a geometry thing. Begins to align one, begins to reduce resistance, makes life better. But doesn't mean that the actual brain system is functioning better. The brain system isn't going to function better until it's treated better. And the most important thing you do in this life for the body is what you feed it. And this is, within this context, how you feed it. If you don't feed it correctly, then you're not going to get the benefits that are there. And it means that you're going to do damage to the potential of what it is to be in this form. And the longevity that we tend to have as a predisposition in the Iranian body. All of this requires maintenance and care. The most important care you can give to your form is that you take in food the way it's correct for you. The final and most sensitive of all digestive systems is the six, this light. And you can see it's about direct and indirect, and it's perhaps the most unusual of the dietary regimens. And I think speaks very much to an emergence of a different kind of form principle, something that, is in the cards for us in terms of the, 2027 and the mutative forces that are at work in us. And whenever you're dealing with sixes, you're really dealing with something that is pointing towards another place. For those beings who are six color, they're either daytime eaters or nocturnals. Daytime eaters or nocturnals. In other words, those beings that can only eat when the sun is up, and those beings that can only eat when the sun is down. Now the nocturnal, only eat when the sun is down, is obviously something that sounds very strange to most beings. Those clients of mine, particularly students, research that I have seen, once you get over the intellectual shock, you discover that basically that's what you've been doing in your life anyway. And if it weren't for the social conditioning of what you do with your time at lunch and these kinds of things, but most people who get into the nocturnal, they realize immediately, that this is something that is really, really healthy for them. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't take liquids in during the day, but the fact is that none of them complain of hunger. Now, what's important in the differences here is that, the daytime eater, the daytime eater needs to have their digestive system function and complete its work before they go to sleep. It's very, very unhealthy for these beings to sleep on their food. Of course, the opposite is true for the nocturnals. It is very important for them to sleep on their food. So, you're dealing with different ways, different circumstances in which the dietary process is being coordinated for the benefit of the individual system. Conditions and circumstances. And yet it all comes down to one thing and one thing only. It comes down to understanding something about uniqueness, that uniqueness is not a concept. The uniqueness that I talk about, the uniqueness that human design offers in a sense. This is not a concept. This is something that is built into us. We all have a predisposition to differentiate. We all have a predisposition to be unique. I think for most human beings, because they cannot possibly understand what that is. I understand that as I say it. That it's very difficult for them, in a sense, to be able to have perhaps the right inspiration to be able to take them along such a journey, because it is a journey that is very, very demanding. This journey of transformation that begins with dietary regimen. You see, the knowledge when it was given to me wasn't given to me for people who were going to be born conditioned like myself. It was given to me for those who were unborn. It was given to me for a time that's going to come, that's beginning now, where infants are raised correctly. Once you have been conditioned in this life, it is quite an ordeal to remove that conditioning. It is a step-by-step process. And because we're so deeply homogenized in the way in which our society operates, and because individuality in its purest sense is frowned on by society, in society everybody wants you to go their way. Everybody wants to feel secure because they can operate in a group together. Everybody wants to take those kinds of decisions that they have support from others because they're afraid in that sense of the consequences of what might happen if they stand on their own. There's an enormous fear in this life to stand on your own and make your own decisions. Everybody is looking for somebody to guide them, looking for somebody to help them, looking for somebody to tell them what to do. And human design is about claiming your own authority. Now, you can't claim your own authority just as a concept. You can't. You claim that authority first and foremost by surrendering to, strategy and authority, surrendering to your mind not making decisions for you. At the end, it's 13 days we've been together, eh? You got to get that by now. I don't know how many times I've said it already. But you have to understand that without strategy and authority, there is no way. There's nothing you can do. Your mind's going to destroy your life. It's going to destroy your life. I'm not saying that the life that you live is going to be destroyed. It's going to be what every homogenized life is. But the potential of you, that nobody knows, not you, not me, not anybody else. That's the magic. This is the thing to grasp, is that we've been homogenized so long, nobody knows what it looks like. I can only be one expression of uniqueness. It doesn't mean that uniqueness is me. It's just one expression of uniqueness. And you can see out of this expression of uniqueness comes a unique outer authority, something that's different. A differentiated awareness. This is what we are all here for. But it's a way to go. To clean out all the old stuff. To learn to be a different kind of mind. To learn to see, to develop your awareness. To learn to see the magic of what it is to allow this form to just be correct. Take all the burden off your shoulders, all of it, all of it, all of it. Just let this vehicle do its thing. And treat it well. You treat it well by allowing it to replenish its energy in a way that is absolutely correct. Correct? What a difference it makes. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of reports now on individuals who have experimented with their PHS. And I think that about in 95% of those cases, that one of the main things that they mention is their sense of heightened acuity, heightened awareness, heightened sensory perception. It is what this is about. We don't even know what it's like. The potential of these forms, we don't know what it's like. We've never treated them properly. We've never given them their authority. Allowed them to just, move correctly on this plane, be correct on this plane so that we can sit back and see the consequences. We can see what kind of a promise we were given. In this predisposition of this form to be different from other forms. This is food. I eat. It's interesting when I look at what human design really is. Human design teaches an antisocial, neo-narcissistic process. That's what it does. It says, hey, you, this is for you. And you can't be taking it in for something else. You take it in for you. And the magic of this knowledge is not learning it. It's living it. You don't live it, you don't see it. You don't live it, you don't get it. That's what the experiment is all about. That's why it's called an experiment. Human design is not a belief system. None of this is about believing. Find out for yourself. Over and over again in the history of this knowledge now, this is what people do. They find out for themselves that it's so. This is the way that it works. Try it. But it's something, again, to understand that you just can't step into it. It has to be correct for you. It has to be correct. There's a lot of pressure on human beings, particularly the New Age, all this pressure to really get it together, to really live the awakened life, all of this stuff. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is all very mundane, very basic. Nobody ever taught you how to make a decision. Nobody ever taught you how to eat. There's nothing more basic. There is nothing more basic. It is so basic that it's spooky because it's the very foundation of everything. Nobody teaches you how to make a decision. Nobody teaches you how to eat. No one's to blame for this vast homogenized mess. Nobody knows what to do. It's what's so profound about what mechanics reveals. It tells you precisely what to do. It's what makes variables so magical. There are each of the steps for you, for any human being, for any individual. There are your steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. There they are. And it's not like you can't do them. It's clear to me that every human being has the capacity because it's a genetic predisposition. Everybody's got a genetic predisposition to differentiate. Everybody. There's only one thing that stands in the way. It's the only thing. I know how difficult that is. It's the only way that you can live in the world, isn't it? You live in the world through your mind. As a matter of fact, in a sense, your mind makes up your life every day. Without it, there is no life for you. So you hold on to it dearly, you trust it deeply, because there is nothing else. It does seem to be you. It's who you think you think you think you think you think you think you are. But don't be fooled. You know? Don't be fooled. The moment that you take decision-making away from that mind, you will see right away that it's not what you thought, that life isn't what you thought, that who you are isn't what you thought, because you've never known. How can you know? A homogenized human being only has a homogenized perspective. They look in the mirror and they see, well, their homogenized purpose, their failures, their pain, their lack of self-esteem. Goes on and on and on. The self-hate in human beings is so profound, it's unbelievable. And it's all here. It's all this. Rattles around and rattles around and rattles around and tells you this and tells you that and torments you. It just torments you. It torments every human being. Human beings in the homogenized world take it for granted that their minds are going to torment them. Make it normal. You know. It's not what we're here for. It's not. We're here to actually enjoy the full splendor of mind. I do. Freed of all of that stuff. Because when you're free of all of that stuff, you can watch. There isn't anything else to do. So hard for human beings to understand that things just happen. They do not happen for your reason. They don't. It is all just movement. How you exist on this plane is how you see it. You cannot see it clearly if your mind is running your life. You can't. And if you truly want to go through a process in which you do transform, in that sense, the nature of your being, then one of the first things that you have to confront is the way you live your life. The way you live your life. And you're going to have to deal with the way in which you take the basic nourishment of your existence in how frivolous we are with food and the way we eat. Because we do not know. And you can see how devastating our food ignorance is. All of the advanced societies on this planet suffer from vast, vast levels of obesity and the disease of obesity and the cost of that to their social system and their medical system and everything else. You know, we have this ugly, ugly, ugly duality in the homogenized world of millions and millions and millions of fat children and millions and millions and millions of starving babies. Not a nice image. The chaos of the homogenized plane. You see, to be correct isn't about volume. It isn't about how much food you eat or you don't eat. It isn't about whether it is good food or not. It's simply about the correctness of what it is for your form to take anything in. Strategy and authority allows your form to take in the experience of life in a way in which it can control its movement. Dietary regimen allows you to take in the nutrition that is going to enhance those aspects of your nature that are going to serve you best, that are going to serve your cognitive potential, that are going to give you the possibility to ultimately experience the enrichment of your awareness, You see, as you experiment in this process, you slowly begin to expand that awareness. You begin to see, and you begin to see differently. But nutrition, this is one of the keys. It is the first step in transformation. And of course it is, in that sense, the doorway to awareness. By the way, for those of you that are interested in, in a deeper level of this, you can visit the Center for Human Differentiation in the PHS or in the Primary Health System Department of the Center. Their work is to help people identify what is their dietary regimen, to be able to support them in that process with all kinds of background information and guidance and so forth and so on. And, for those that have entered into the strategy and authority, if it's correct for you, if this is something that, that you're ready for, then that certainly is a place where you'll get the best support. But to all of you anyway, it was an interesting one. Nice to share it with you. And all of you take care. And until next time, bye for now.